Hello everyone, welcome to the channel. My name is Nisha. I'll need another life. I just don't know what I'm doing in this channel, but in this video we are going to talk about trains. So it happened such that a junior of mine asked me that why would anyone on this planet write a poem on train? And I simply told her because train is important. And she was like, why is train important? So here's a video. The video will be divided into two parts. First, we'll try to analyze train as a cultural artifact. So in this, we'll try to talk about how train is a part of literature and cinema and how it has become one of the oldest motif that has been used in cinema. And then in the second part, we'll analyze the poem that she was talking about, that is To a Locomotive in Winter by Walt Whitman. So let's get in. If I were to ask you the most iconic scene in Indian cinema, what would it be? I'd really like you to please mention your favorite scene in the comment section below and just let me know if you want me to analyze that scene. I'll happily do that. But yes, I don't think it will take you much time to land on the ending scene of DDLJ, the most iconic film of Indian Hindi cinema. So there is this Raj and there is Simran, and Simran is running towards Raj, who is on a moving train. The train here symbolizes a new journey that the couple has to embark on, and it is a symbol of freedom for Simran from the patriarchal. But yes, Raj himself is patriarchal, but it doesn't matter, okay? Yes, the film has many problems, but it is still the most iconic. But it is not just Indian cinema. Train has been one among the oldest motifs in world cinema. The Lumiere Brothers, who are considered to be the fathers of cinema, made many movies, but the most iconic of them is the arrival of train at Ciotat. It's a 50-second film. That was the average duration of a film in that time. But it is shot in such a way that you'll feel a tapering effect of the train coming in. So the train is small here and it is coming in and it gets larger. And the myth goes that when people first saw the film, when it was first screened, people thought that it was a real train that was coming towards them, and they got so terrified they started screaming and running around the theatre. That established train in the very beginning as one among the most important symbol, the most important motive, the most important trope of storytelling, both in cinema, and it was already there in literature. We'll come to that when we'll start talking about the poem. There have been many movies that are set around train, or train plays a very important part. The missing or catching of a train is a very important trope that movies use or literatures around the world use, because train is not something that is in your control. Had it been any other mode of transport, not talking about aeroplanes, that didn't exist back in those times, but yes, most of them were in your control. The car, bicycle, bus, all of it was in your control. You could ask the driver to stop it so that the other person can jump in. But train being such a massive production, one among the most magnificent invention of mankind, it was unstoppable and it was a marker of progress. But at the same time, it could also mean destruction. You have movies in which the biggest of tragedies happen around a train. The burning train, you have great robberies happening on train. Train is also a place where you cut off from your regular life, and thus a new story starts. It is a break from your regular life, so it is a way, it is a place of retrospection or of reflection or of relaxation, and it is a place of accidental meetings. So there are romantic encounters that happen on train, and if the most iconic, that is how Harry Potter and Ron and Emma Watson, what's her name? sorry Potterhead, don't mean to disappoint you, but mujhe sach Hermione, yes. So it is in train that you have these three meet for the first time, and then you have the greatest of separations happening on train. About what I told about catching and missing of train, you have seen how Imtiaz Ali brilliantly uses that motive in Jab We Met. And then in literature, you have Anna Karenina, you have The Signalman by Charles Dickens, you have Murder on the Orient Express by Agatha Christie, Train to Pakistan, endless number of titles that are written on or around trains. And in fact, there is a Wikipedia page on the songs written on and around train. It's a list of over 1,000 songs that are written about or on train. So the list is endless. If I start jotting down all the names, it will take me a lifetime. You name the genre and there is a train for it. Mystery or horror, romance, action, fantasy. Let me know if I'm missing any. But yes, in detective, what else? Do I miss any? Murder, mystery, crime, fiction, everything. There is a train for everything. In fact, the window of the train, if you look at it carefully, there is a framed window through which you can see things going outside. It is a perfect illusion of a parallel of what we see in cinema. That there is a framed image that is moving, and though it is you who is moving, but when sitting along that window, it feels as if everything outside is moving. So there is this paradox of stillness and movement, all of which creates an effect which helps you go to a different place altogether, both literally and metaphorically, because that's what literature does and that's what cinema does. It takes you to a different place, unlike your regular place. One very important feature of train is that it is different from all other modes of communication or transportation, because it's not for an hour or two that people sit in trains. People usually take long journeys on trains, and so it is a perfect place for camaraderie, perfect places for meeting people and building a community around, telling each other stories, perfect place for discussing politics, everything. You cannot do this in a bus or a jeep. I hope I'm being clear here. I'll need another life. Coming to the second part of the video. Come. You won't see me there, don't worry. So मैं बाय बोल देती हूँ. नहीं ठीक है, आओ चलो next part में. This is the poem you're talking about, To a Locomotive in Winter, and it is written by Walt Whitman. I am assuming you know why Walt Whitman is known for. He is known for a great many things, but the two most important thing being free verse and his idea of an American scholar or an American poet. Free verse plays an important role in this poem because free verse is reflective of both the locomotive, which is free, and then it also represents the free America. You can see the structure of the poem. It's so unusual because the first stanza is of 17 lines, and then you have such a short second stanza compared to the first one. The length of the lines vary like anything. There is no particular kind of meter or number of meter used. Everything goes much like the train, not really caring about the form, but just being there, strong, free, fierce. And then the second idea of an American poet, how Whitman uses that idea in this poem. I would like to quote Whitman here. The American poets are to enclose old and new. His spirit responds to his country's spirit, unquote. And in 1850s and 70s, Whitman knew that the spirit of the country is mechanical, technological development. Emerson too has said, and I quote, "Railroad iron is a magician's rod in its power to evoke the sleeping energies of land and water," unquote. To Emerson, the railroad was a proper material for poetry, but it is only Whitman who, with great readiness, puts this American vast seething mass of material into literary use. Of his several poems on locomotive, To a Locomotive in Winter stands out because though trains started to come in 1850s, it was only in 1870s that they took the poetic appearance which Whitman alludes in this poem. Moreover, through this poem, Whitman feels a more personal connection with the locomotive than any of his other poems on the locomotive. Coming to the poem starts with a priestly tone where Whitman addresses the locomotive as thee and thy continuously, and he proclaims its attributes before formally invoking it to come serve the muse. Whitman's attitude is not like a merely interested observer, a bystander on a station, but of a worshipper in the face of a ritualistic invocation, as Milton does to his muses in his Paradise Lost, or as Shelley does to the West Wind. The first 17 lines, the first 17 lines are devoted to praise the locomotive concretely and dramatically, almost part by part. You have the cylindrical body, the brass, the connecting rods, the sidebars. He praises every single body part of the locomotive. It's almost like Andrew marvels to his choir mistress, where he says that if I had like 1,000 years to live, you'd have praised every single body part of the mistress to impress her. But Whitman doesn't need 1,000 years. He is just praising every single part that you can imagine of the locomotive, the nitrate frame, springs, valves, everything out there that you can see. But it's not to impress the locomotive, because the locomotive is not an unworldly thing. It is a metaphysical entity for Whitman, because it's like a deity for Whitman. The poem is full with visual images of the locomotive in a winter evening, on a snowy evening, winter day declining, and it's like an image of a moving train in a snowstorm, but it is moving slow with starting puffs of the engine. And these natural images are Whitman's speciality. He fills his poems with natural images, and then the auditory images. The poem starts with recitative and the throbbing, the beat convulsive. All these are auditory images, and they give you an idea of a train that is just starting. But as we go on to the second stanza, the music of the poem gets fierce, lawless. There is this demonic laughter that we can hear with shrieks that has no sweetness of harp or piano, and the rhythm of the verse grows more rapid, as if the train has picked up speed. The poem is also filled with kinesthetic images that show this movement. You have driving storm and they declining, and parallel and connecting rods, gyrating, shuttling, floating. All of this show the speed and power that the locomotive stands for. And thus the majestic aura is captured in the line, type of modern emblem of motion and power, pulse of the continent. In the second stanza, the tone of the poem changes to a more ecstatic personal tone. Roll through my chant. This stanza reveals that the final awesomeness, if I may use this word, of the locomotive is not the mechanical but the supernatural, and that the locomotive has its own soul, untamed, mad, and demonic, as the animalistic images that was seen in the first stanza as pant and roar dominates this stanza in a more fierce way, with fierce-throated beauty, the madly whistled laughter, and trills of shrieks unpent, glad, and strong. The poet observes the soul of the locomotive, which is rumbling with life. We need to understand here that the poet, Walt Whitman himself, is in his winter days. It is like his day declining. He is in his declining health. He wants to be unpent and glad and strong, just like the locomotive, and thus the locomotive has a very personal connection with Whitman. The locomotive is not just in body so fierce, but in spirit too, and Walt Whitman wants to imbibe that spirit. Moreover, the last line alludes to Walt Whitman's idea of America: free skies, unpent, glad, and strong. Thus, the poem isn't simply about a train, but about the idea that train stands for: the freedom, the fierceness, the uncontrollable nature of the train. Though the day is declining, but it is the beginning of the train. The train is starting, and it is only in the later paragraph, and it is only in the later stanza that the train gains this speed and is what Walt Whitman calls the modern emblem of motion and power, pulse of the continent. It's not just a train, it's an idea with which Walt Whitman wants to connect himself, because he too wants to be that tremulous twinkle and that powerful spirit. And it is only in the locomotive that he can find that, because talking about his time, nothing was more powerful than the locomotive. So this was the poem. I hope I was able to make it clear to you all. I hope my analysis was good enough. That might have helped you. Do let me know what you think about it. Bye bye.